Okay, so good evening, everyone. This is Victorian Vanguard, and this is going to be the ninth episode of Victorian Vanguard, and it's happening for a long time right now. And before introducing, I just have to say one thing: it is that Peter Lang is sponsoring us as a publication partner, and we will going to publish a book based on this lecture series. So today we have with us a very special person. Shauli, would you like to introduce him?
Hello everyone, I'm Shauli and Ritam is also here as we have already introduced us like we do every time. So today we have with us Arka Chakraborty and he has done his MPhil on the biopolitical formulation of the early patristic writings from the Department of English, Jadavpur University. He is doing his PhD in the same department on Victorian horror fiction and its biopolitical understanding. I think we know Orko early, like since earlier also because his paper has been selected for our upcoming book titled Blue Victorian as well,
Thank you,
that he
thank you.
co-authored with his supervisor. So, we are very excited for this lecture series today. And Ritom, would you like to talk more about the title of the lecture and what is, or like even Orko, if you want to talk something about the lecture?
So, Ritam, will you talk
Uh,
something?
I think you should go with
Okay. So, what I'll try to do basically today is that as I have said in my title, that hand is one of the most important hermeneutical structure in Dracula, and which has not been highlighted by this is uh, various critics' writings on Dracula. So from Janice Secundra to Anne McWatt to Philip Holden and Eric Van Hoy and other people, Carol Essence and other people, they have not uh, tried to do anything with it, right? So they basically what they have done is they use the lens, the triadic structured lens of feminism, gender studies, and psychoanalysis. So most of the readings, or probably all of the readings of Dracula have been in that line, like Dracula is the absent mother or Dracula is the absent father. So these kinds of things, right? So I am not doing that myself. When I started to read Dracula for my thesis, for my dissertation, I saw a very interesting thing that when Jonathan Harker is going to the castle of Dracula, uh, that part is generally taken is as very literal part, right? Like Jonathan Harker's journey and Jonathan Harker's slightly snide comments about the Eastern world. So these parts are taken as colonial structures and colonial and born out of colonial mindset. But I have thought that what if this is not simply a literal journey? What if it is a metaphorical journey? For example, let me give you just one example that in Dante's famous writing, so we there is this narrator. He is also journeying through the forest, and Jonathan Harker is also doing that, exactly doing that, almost replicating that other journey, right? In other literature forms also, like have you heard of Matsuo Basho? He was a Japanese poet. So he wrote a travelogue kind of thing, in which the journey to the north of Japan was also a kind of self-assessment. So this spirit journey as a spiritual metaphor, journey as a spiritual search for meaning of self, that has been done throughout the literature, right? But in case of Dracula, no one has tried to do that. No one has tried to read Jonathan Harker's journey as kind of spiritual journey. Always literal, always colonial, colonial intervention into the heart of darkness. But what if that is not? So from that point on, I started to read Dracula differently. I started to read Dracula with theological connotations, right? So when I started doing that, I saw that Dracula has this kind of political theological meaning which has not been poked into, right? So I am trying to do that, but it's not possible to talk about everything that I have done in my research in here today. But I will be talking about the hand, how hand is located between this theological structure and the political structure, between the bios and the politicos, between the Homo animalis and the Homo sapiens, right? So it is important that we understand biopolitics. We talk about biopolitics a bit. Uh, how I'm seeing biopolitics. We all have read that 1990s book by Terry Eagleton. I think Ideology. It's basic reading kind of. So in that book, Terry Eagleton gave almost 20 or 22, I don't exactly remember the number, but more than 20 definitions of ideology. Now, in one definition, he says that ideology is a technology through which the meaning is created in society or culture. So, in that vein, I'm understanding biopolitics, that human body is inserted into this political technology and given newer meanings. So therefore, human hand is also a part of human body, and it functions very differently in various structures, in various political technologies. Right. So I am just going to start to share my PPT that I have created for this. Shawnil, please help me. Okay. Rita was saying that you have Mac laptop, so just tell me that if you can see the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. There is this share screen option.
Yes,
Just
allow share window, right?
yeah, yeah. Allow share window.
And
Um,
yeah,
and then you upload the PPT there.
can you see it?
Yup. But it's dark. I think it will load in a while.
Can you see it now?
It's the screen is dark. I think is it a connection issue?
I don't know. I mean, I can see it, but can you see it?
No, we can't see it.
Oh,
Why don't you do one thing? You just well, do it again.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, do it again. Because what happens when we use Mac is that sometimes you need to allow things, go to the settings and allow things. So
Now,
no, it's not working. You can do one thing. You can send Ritom the PPT and send it to me, and then we can,
wait.
yeah.
Show my screen anyway.
Just send it to my mail.
Okay, I don't have your mail ID. Okay, wait. Just one sec, huh?
Yes. Orko, you have muted yourself. You need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Technical glitches like this keep on happening, so nothing to worry about it. We have just started, so it's all right.
Do you see my screen right now?
No, you need to
Nothing.
click here. So here you have the option share screen. I'll just show you. Okay, there is calculate and there will be three options in front of you. Chrome tab, window, and entire screen. So you can choose
I am not
anything.
using Chrome. I am using Safari. Is that a problem?
Now we can see your screen now. I think it's working.
You can. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. So yes. So this is what I'm talking about. The terrible hand. This is obviously Bram Stoker in 1906. But before going into the text, before going into what I'm going to talk about, that most of the critical structures, most of the critical formulations about Dracula they use this triad of feminism and psychoanalysis and gender studies. So no one has talked about the hand, and that's a strange thing because hand is so palpable here in the novel, throughout the novel, every character, and the hand gestures are described in detail, right? So also hand is obviously you might ask that why hand. Uh, Hand is one of the fundamental things that human beings are using for centuries. Like if we see this Bela Lugosi film, Bela Lugosi's strangeness is portrayed through his eyes and not through his hands, right? So most of the critical structures, most of the critical writings on Dracula, they have been following this trend. But now let me show you something. This is Giotto's Joachim's Dream, a Renaissance painter, as you know. Um, it's I am not going into the details. This is the at the right side. This is Joachim, who is sad because he is not to have children, and then this angel appears. Now look at the angel closely. Look at angel's hands. See, from hand, from the hand of angels, so we don't know whether the angel is man or woman. So I am referring it to it. So from its hands, the benevolence is coming towards him. Right? Do you see this? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, we can see this. We can see
Okay,
this.
okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, if there is any problem, we'll let you know. So you just don't worry about it at all.
I'm just really concerned about this, so that this is
No,
showing.
it's all right. If there are any technical problems or if no
Okay,
one is
okay,
being able to say
okay. So
anything,
you
we'll
see this,
inform.
right? So from the hand, the benevolence is going towards Joachim. Now Joachim will have a daughter, which obviously you know is Mary, the mother of Jesus. Now this is you will say that this is a random event. This is a random use of hand that Giotto used. Now I'll show you something more interesting. This is 40,000 years old cave painting in Borneo. It is a hand. Now, for a fun fact, I am slightly interested in archaeology. So, if you are aware of anything in that part, so you will know that in general we have been taught. I don't know what other states in India teach at the school level, but in our times in West Bengal schools, it had been taught that human civilization has been here for like 5,000 years or 6,000, 7,000 years. This cave painting comes from 40,000 years old uh, painting. Now, do you understand what it means? It means that there might be an alternative timeline, there might be an alternative structure for human civilization. And we might also have to alter the understanding of what we can call civilization and what we cannot call civilization. Right? So what I'm trying to say is basically that hand has been an important part of the body for humans for uh, more time than we can remember. And this is again from Dracula, our text, when Jonathan Harker is welcomed by the Count. So, in Stoker's Dracula, what happens is that a curious rhetorical structure is employed in order to constitute the difference between the count and the narrative's other human structures. So, hand becomes a hermeneutic signal in which we can differentiate between what is human and what is not. The count is, as you all have know who have read the novel, that count is always already associated with the wild through wolves, the children of the night. Now, why wolves? Wolves itself is a strange metaphor because if you think about it, wolves, for example, there is this novel, if I'm not wrong, which was published. It was published in 1947, and I don't know French, so pardon my pronunciation of the name. Jean Guillaume. I don't know if anybody knows the real pronunciation of this man's. So Jean Guillaume was a French novelist who wrote a novel, A King Alone, which was published in 1947. In that novel, you will see that wolves are exactly how it is generally prescribed in conservative literature, that they are wild, they're ferocious, they defy any forms of civilization. And there is also this famous case of the beast of Jevandun. Again, I don't know the French, so pardon my pronunciation. So this beast of Jevandun is a strange case. Just let me give you some short description of it. From 1764 to 1767, in the south central France, in those countryside parts of France, uh, there there was this beast whose nature we don't know. We still don't know what this beast was. Some said it was a wolf man. Some said it was some kind of spirit. Some said it was kind of a rabid wool pack. What happened is that almost 100 people of 100 peasants mostly, people were killed by these beasts. And then suddenly this beast vanished. So beasts, especially wolves, are associated with the beastly side of human nature, and it happens also in Count Dracula's case. He says he hails the wolves as the children of night. So he must be a devilish creature, obviously. But then again, wolves are also part of the formulation of the greatest city on earth in Western imagination, Rome. So whether wolves are actually beastly creatures or wolves are actually the cradle of the civilizational structures, it is that is an ambiguous point, and Dracula holds this ambiguity, right? So but anyway, what happens in Dracula is that the Count delivers his speeches while his hands accompany the cadences of his utterances, like a bodily symptom of his speech. That is fine. I mean, the vivid description of hands and the and his gestures, they might be the part of the atmosphere building. That is fine. But things change when we come to this under this quotation. I'm quoting from the novel when Harka describes his hand. This is the quotation, and I'm reading it and I'm quoting it from the novel. It's from I am using the Penguin edition of Dracula, which was published in 2003, edited by Maurice Hindle, and the quotation is from page 40. So in this, we see that hitherto I have noticed the backs of his hands as they lay on his knees in the firelight, and they had seemed rather white and fine. But seeing them now close to me, I could not but notice that they were rather coarse, broad with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs in the center of the palm. The nails were long and fine and cut to a sharp point. As the Count leaned over me and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. Thus, the hands of Dracula ascribes to his potential and obvious intention at violence. His hand does not belong to a social being that communicates and collaborates with his fellow beings, but rather to a predator like, like an wolf whose hardened and fine teeth nails make him better at hunting. His hands are like the wolves and dogs, instruments of rapacious murder, of scavenging food. For Harkar, the man from the civilization where food is not reserved only for the hunter gatherer, the Count's hands are not simply terrifying, an echo of an attribute that humans are supposed to have evolved out of, but also they constitute an object of scrutiny. And I'm coming to these. So I'm quoting here. In any case, I could not mistake the hands which I had had so many opportunities of studying. See, so this is this Harker says, or Harker writes in his journal, when the count is climbing down the wall, like some strange creature. So the peculiar anatomical detail formulates the essential identification of the count. So basically, the hand becomes the identity of the count. It's not anything else. It's not how he behaves. It's not how much he reads, how much voracious a reader he is of English fiction and train timetables. It is the hands that becomes his identification. Even when the Harker scopes out a figure which, although seemingly human, can crawl down the eaves of the trenchant wall, Harker can confidently recognize the hands of the Count. Thus, the hands become the distinguishing markers of Dracula. The Count's hands, in contrast to the hands belonging to the Humanitus, constitutes a heuristic architecture in order to produce an indissoluble other within the narratological space. His hairy palms, in generally tucked away surreptitiously and cautiously, which often in critical dialogues with the text have been reduced to signify the palms of an onanist, because, as you know, as I have told, that for example, David Seat, a very important critic in Dracula criticism, he has told that Dracula is an onanist. That's why the hairs are there. So, but I'm not going into that direction, obviously. The hands postulate signs of his unfallen status. In the anecdote of the Genesis, the productive labor of agriculture, the foundational element of any civilizational inheritance, is depicted as a curse that accompanied the fall, along with procreation and mortality. So you can understand that I am trying to say, what I'm trying to say is that Dracula has not yet been fallen. Dracula is an Adam who has not yet been fallen. Dracula is a prelapsarian Adam. Therefore, he has no use for agriculture. Therefore, he has no use for any industry or labor. And therefore, his hands has evolved. His hands are evolved into something strange, right? So the fall was actually what made us human. So let me just read from my thesis. In extension to this didactic pessimism, any form of labor, inclusive of the predominantly industrial labor of the Victorian times, is reduced to an affair of servitude by the Count. He seems to be offended by the very idea of the human labor. He reserves only a curious condescension for social class that vends their labor. Even when he attends upon Harker, first as the driver of the cart and later as the provider of various services in his castle, he does that in concealment, as if some retinue of invisible servants are allocated with the dispersal of their labor in order for Harker to receive the amenities of the castle. So, for Dracula, labor is kind of a shameful thing, because obviously he has not been cursed with this labor, and labor has this association with sin, with with not acknowledging the god's orders. So for Dracula, labor is always to be happened in concealment, right? So in general, these concealed negotiations with labor has been written off as a class bias of the Count in critical discourse. But in the capacity of his strange theological position, as I have been telling you from the beginning, from what perspective which I intend to read the Victorian fiction and especially Dracula today here now, the Count cannot consider labor as anything else other than a figment of the divine curse. Human labor, however generative or constitutive, consists traces of the inappropriateness of the disobedience. Of course, the disobedience of our first forefathers in Western imagination, Adam and Eve. Without the smoothening continuities of the labor, the Count's hands bears the marks of the absence of any agricultural profession or of any industrial productive marker The palms, unused for any productive action, have been left in their inherited desolation to end up in a hair the touch of the count, therefore, can only incite sensibilities of horror, a shudder, namely, for they mark the astoundingly empty nature of the count's existence, of the absolute void that engulfs his existence. The count inhabits this unknowable abyss, a crease before the beginnings of the historical movements, where events occur within only the dimness of their own occurrences and do not reach out to causally attach themselves to other events. And Dracula inhabits the sedimentation of occurrences without the need for agriculture or industry. So, in other words, if we just simplify what I've written in this somewhat convoluted lines, Dracula is basically existing in a ahistorical space, since our history begins with the fall and ends with the parousia or the second coming of Jesus the Christ. That is the length of our history in theological understanding, right? In simplest terms. So, since Dracula is a prelapsarian Adam, since Dracula has no use for industry or labor or any historical thrust which would exceed or which would prompt the civilizational increments, he is living beyond a historical sensibility. He is living beyond the history, right? So he constitutes in this stillness the opposition to the Homo economicus. He is Homo animalus. He is not Homo economicus. In contrast to this ontology of drought of the Count's hands, of the desolation of life and its myriad activities that constitute the paraphernalia of the socially active living, the human hand in the novel showcases a fecundity of communication, warmth, and labor, while the Count's hand seemed like a steel vise that could have crushed Harker's hands. Maurice, one of the men showing espousal interest in Lucy, solemnly, and under quotes, puts out both his hands, end of quotes, to hold Lucy's and enumerates his amicable intention towards her. And I'm quoting again, little girl, that is Harker, Maurice is saying, little girl, I hold your hand and you have kissed me. And if these things don't make us friends, nothing ever will. So you see, the hands are coded structures of friendship. Through hands, friendships are created. So this is another picture of Dracula climbing down the wall, and since this is a very important part of Jonathan Harker's understanding what Dracula is, this has been drawn again and again. I have just used two examples. This is another version, so that's it. Uh, Anyway, hands, therefore, communicate promises of friendship, of solemn articulation of social affairs. They are also conducive to gestures of sorrow when words fail and the systems of language is needed to be replaced with something more intimate. It was, and I'm quoting again, it was also beautiful before us that we took hands as we sat. End of quotes. Holding of hands, at least in Dracula, contains something excess of language, something that cannot be restricted by the grammar of coherence, an indescribable element that rejects formulation. The touch of the skins, mingling of the fingertips, the distance between them vanishing, confabulates some clandestine understanding that are not to be grasped by the imperturbable succession of words. The human touch invokes something pre-linguistic and yet something intensely organic to the social fabric. And I'm quoting again, she kissed my rough old hand and blessed me. Yes, I took his hand and promised him. End quotes. The hands seem to always refer to some promise and a profound intentionality towards keeping that promise made in earnest. The fragile human hand laden with years and the mortality etched on the skin, are whispering to each other, as if underneath the textual expanse, a secret hermeneutical alcove is meticulously carved. With those furtive, meticulous gestures of the hands that sometimes echoed the syntactical articulations, provides them with a resonance that would have been absent without it, and sometimes discreetly enumerates oppositional movements to the assertion that the novel seemingly accepts without much interrogations or discordance. Thus, the complex system of knowledge is functional within the space of the narrative, an epistemology of the hands, in which the guided motioning of the hands produces a constricted, balanced architecture of implications, intended or not, and with the assistance of such a delicate and pointed use of the human limb, the text assembles different grades of meaning, more sophisticated shades, complicates the monolithic anecdotal strand with various contours, builds an intrinsic serenade, the design of which is controlled and the effect deftly evocative. The text becomes a culmination of physical gestures, motions of the hands that make the underlying signification alluding to life. The hands being the primary limb uh, associated or assigned to effectuate human forms of labor become a system of rendering implications in the novel. This literary mechanism, however, inherits a profound cultural anxiety involving the enmeshed transaction of the hands with mechanical philosophy. Charles Babbage, the great mathematician, was inseparably excited about the possibilities of mechanical tools and allowed for himself no hesitation regarding the conspicuous improvements that the technology generated over the biological possibilities of the human hands. And I'm quoting from him, quoting from one of his texts, in fact, which was published in 1832, Economy of Machines and Manufactures. Uh, Without tools, that is, by the mere efforts of the human hand, there are undoubtedly multitudes of things which it would be impossible to make. Add to the human hand the rudest cutting instrument, and its powers are enlarged. The fabrication of many things then becomes easy, and that of others possible with great labor. The constitution of end quote, the constitution of the human hands, merely flesh and blood, for Babbage, could not even hope to produce results as efficient or with as much dexterity as the mechanical hands, the machines of the metallic hardness driven by the strength of the stream. Human hands, for Babbage, was prone to miscalculation and was more often than not was burdened by the absence of will, accessible to the disinclination of the labor. So for Charles Babbage, mechanical hands, which not simply added to the effectiveness or dexterity of the human hand, it also lessened the inclination to not work of the human hand, right? So he thought that he had a very much capitalist mind in which he thought that the aggressive mechanism of the mechanical hands would increase uh, proportions of production, right? So, and Dracula's hands are like that. Dracula's hands are almost like the mechanical hands. They are powerful, they are strong, and they are not human. That the main point is that they are not at all human. They don't create any connections like other hands in the text do. Like they don't create friendship. They don't create uh, marriage vows and other things. Now, uh, I'm quoting. Of course, there were other voices which oppose Charles Babbage. So I am quoting from an essay called The Anatomy of Anglican Industry, Mechanical Philosophy, and Early Factory Fiction. It is written by Peter J. Capuano and which was published in 2020 in Victorian hands, the manual turn in the 19th century body studies. Right? So Capuano shows how, I'm quoting, how factory workers had few, if any, rights to compensation from their employees after their survival from workplace accidents. This was partly because the rapidly expanding economic activity provided employers with financial incentives to ignore the law. It was simply cheaper for employers to pay nominal fines when there were injuries and to keep the factory equipments running as usual than to stop the machines and fence off the most dangerous parts. As a result, factory production in this unregulated era created large numbers of industrial amputations, particularly of the hands and the fingers. So, of course, when you are using machines that heavy, and at that point of time, the machines were not very much secure. So, at that point of time, what happened is that many laborers lost their hands or fingers in those machines, right? So, and these people were uh, like who were amputated through machines were called factory soldiers. Now, these factory soldiers often found themselves in horrible accidents and were left amputated and unable to find work anymore. Therefore, when Charles Bell was nominated to write a book in a series commissioned by the Royal Society, he chose his subject to be human hands. As a person in whom the episcopal ethics were deeply ingrained and inculcated from his childhood, he had no trouble in understanding the hands as epitomes of the beauty and designing proficiency of the Creator. Now, here comes again the theological understanding of hand. For him, the human hand produced, under quotes, the last and best proof of that principle of adaptation which evinces design in the creation, end quote. The biological hesitancy of Babbage's understanding is denied here for a sophisticated theological ontology of the human. The hand is the conduit through which the human is bound to the beauty of creation. For Bill, the sensory feeling of touch is more fundamental and revealing than the distant cognition of gazing. The loss of such an important limb through industrial accidents caused by the greed of the factory owners breaks something away from the essential nature of the human soul. So you can see again that in Bell's writing, as I said earlier in Harker's case, while Harker found the identification of Dracula in the hands, Bell also finds the humanity, the essence of humanity in the hands again. So Capino explains in his essay two opposing and conversing interpretation played out a dialectic of the human hand. I'm quoting again. In an article entitled The Factory System from April 1833, an author for Blackwood's Edinburgh magazine, John Wilson, located human factory operatives in the same liminal space between machines and animals. Though as a class they are degraded, they are yet human. They feel, though you treat them as such, that they are neither machines nor brutes. The anxiety stemming from the precariousness of this body part, so essential to notions of what it meant to be human, held fascination with the hand for the remainder of the 19th century. Thus, the facticity after the quote. Thus, the facticity of the bee-handedness was intimately associated with the ontological queries of being human. The figure of the animal, the crystallization of the beast whose life is not punctuated by labor and whose life only points an articulation of the basic biological forms, is reiterated in depicting the fancy factory soldiers who lost their hands. Thus, The industrial accidents could possibly produce a declination of the humanness itself, an anxiety that was effectively present in the Victorian society and was palpably justified by the occurrence of such accidents in copious amounts. The animal, the stripping away of the veneers of culture, of the form of life, as Agamben said it, was a constant source of worry in the Victorian sensibility. In Stoker's novel, therefore, this fear has been combated with rigorously and repeatedly. The effect of human touch continuously evinces a sense of comfort, of generous friendship, even of spousal serenity. Mina, in her letter to Lucy, is exuberant about the moment Harker holds her. And I'm quoting again. Then he took my hand in his, and oh, Lucy, it was the first time he took his wife's hands and said that it was the dearest thing in all the wide world, and that he would go through all the past again to win it, if need be. The holding of hands, the first touch of marital bonding between Harker and Mina as spouses in a moment what needs to be recorded carefully and leaving no details of such an intimate moment unrecorded or unshared is in itself an imperative. The matrimonial assertion through the human touch is constituent of the expressive faculties of the Victorian hands. The fact that the warmth of the skin transfers significance of community, of societal caress to the individual is referred to through the entire text of Dracula, reiterating the cultural enmeshment from which the text emerges. In fact, and this is my last point, the emergence of the text itself, the contours of its own existential preferences, is marked by the human hand. In a metatextual turn, the text continuously alerts itself and the readers to its own production, notes produced from various sources and copied and assembled into order by Mina's skillful hands. Harker's notes in shorthand, Dr. Seward's voice notes recorded by his device, serendipitous telegrams arriving from Van Helsing, letters from Mina and Lucy, some of which remain unopened, official threads of intimations, all of these myriad sources are pooled into a cohesive structure of narrative. A narrative that does, under quotes, stand forth as simple fact, end of quote, which does not offer any possibility for mistake. Again, under quote, for all the records chosen are exactly contemporary, given from the standpoints and within the range of knowledge of those who made them, end quote. This is actually from the very first page of the text of Dracula, where the text alludes itself to be a factual narrative. Thus, the introductory and fictitious remarks prepared the audience for the self conscious textuality of the narrative while performing a scene that was enacted behind the accumulation of the narrative itself. The territory of constructing a narrative is glanced through, a territory that is qualified as an act of human hands. Again, Mina not simply collated all the documents necessary for the production of a consistent and chronologically sensible account of their adventure. She had to copy from all those diverse forms of records into a cogent, legible structure in writing. And I'm stressing on in writing. Thus, Mina and her labor is the generative and performative impetus of the culture, an indissoluble narratological pronouncement on whom is balanced the veracity of the text itself and also its very generation. The laboring constitution of the human is also depicted or deciphered as the generative of the cultural production. The human is, therefore, in contrast to what signifying assertion the count implements, connected to simultaneously the manufacturing technology of products of physical and cultural production to the laboring ascription. The facticity of this laboring anatomy is again underlined in the atrocious events occurring on the Demeter in its final voyage. It is noted in the novel that the dying captain of the ship tied his hands to the wheel of the ship. The humanities cannot be disassociated, therefore, from the modalities of labor and from their structure of bee-handedness, which I am calling it. The hairy hand of the indissoluble other is not associated with the pragmatics of labor as the fundamental granular realities of human civilization. In these, the figure of the Dracula, the Homo animalus, uh, is created, is erected, and the structure of humanities collapses absolutely into its opposite. So, thank you. Here ends my uh, presentation. I hope.
Um, yeah. Uh, so thank you, Orko, for your wonderful presentation. Personally, I like this talk a lot. There are a lot of ideas that were going on my head when we were talking, when you were talking about it
Thank you. Thank
specifically.
you.
I mean, when you brought Agamben, that is the moment I was thinking about Agamben, and I thought, okay,
Yes,
maybe
obviously,
he is
it's,
going to
I'm very much
mention
influenced by
it, right?
Agamben.
Yeah, of
As you have
course. Yes,
as
and
you have
all.
said, my MPhil was on the patristic writings, right? So
Yes, yes, yes.
I am very much fond of Agamben, to be
Right.
honest, and Robert Esposito also.
Right. I love the fact that you kind of posited the entire idea of Dracula, and which is bereft of the spiritual journey inside the arena of political theology. That is something that is very uncommon and very unique. I mean, when
Thank
I
you.
have thought of, I have like, when you started your lecture, now it came to my mind that I have also thought about this entire Dracula thing from the triad, the primary triad that you mentioned, from
It is
gender
always
studies,
like that.
biopolitics. But I have never thought, I mean, thank you for giving us a very new perspective of thinking about this, because personally speaking, I have never thought about that Dracula could be thought about from theological perspective. So that was a very brilliant point, I think, and kudos to you from bringing that. And I think there are certain things that I wrote down during your presentation that I think I would like to talk about. This idea of the hand, that you are particularly focusing on and only on one effective tool, becomes very interesting. I
Yes.
mean, it's very interesting because I mean, you are working on something that is very minute and also very minuscule.
Yeah.
So there are very high, I think the research must, it's also something that it requires a lot of attention and stuff like that. Because I think when I was listening to your lecture, I remember one paper that I read during my performance studies course, and it was Heidegger's idea on the inquiry of technology.
Yeah.
So in
Okay.
that, yeah, in that paper specifically, Heidegger professes and he talks about human hand. I think
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
this lecture, you will also like it. So he specifically talks about this multifaceted idea of the human hand, and how human hand not only distinguishes humans from animals, but also human hands are part of human man's essence, their being. These are not
Exactly.
only tools.
Because
That is also
for
something that you
Heidegger,
talked in your lecture.
yeah, for Heidegger, I think the animals do not exist. I mean, existence is something which only human can do. So
You have
for
this very
him,
Cartesian way of thinking,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
very much. Yes, but he is like that, but he thinks so. So I
yeah,
think for him, hands are very important because
exactly.
hands are what makes humans humans.
Yeah, he even specifically, if you interpret it in the arena of AI, recently, Heidegger's
Yeah.
entire argument, you will understand that specifically what he means is that the only thing that distinguishes human beings from AI, and how AI can never replace human beings, because we have human hands.
Yeah, it's actually it is interesting. There is this page I follow in Instagram, Persistence of Cinema, which I'm sure
Hmm.
you have heard of.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So they have
Persistence.
just interviewed Wonker Wai. Yesterday
Right,
I was seeing. So they asked Wonker Wai that um, why do you think that sorry, AI would not be able to create human movies? And
right,
Wonker Wai says that human AI could do anything, but AI does not have the yearning which humans
right.
have. So
Definitely.
this touch, this warmth, this
Yeah, yeah.
exchange of human gestures and exchange of human warmth from one hand to other hand, that happens only through hand. And I
Right.
want to again, I remember something else in the Sistine Chapel, the famous painting that God creating
God
Adam.
creating Adam.
Yes, the God's hands are strict.
Yes.
They are almost reaching out, but the Adam's hands are almost hesitant. They
Right.
are refusing almost to touch the God's hands, God's fingers.
Right.
So if you look at that, so that becomes also the part of this structure, this theological structure of hand.
I mean, it's not only specifically in only in the Sistine Chapel. Even if you look at the like now, and I mean the contemporary pop culture as well.
Yeah,
For example, Wednesday Adams, and if you look at the Adams family, you
yeah,
see
yeah,
there is
yeah.
this particular hand on Wednesday's
Yeah,
like
actually,
hand
Adam's
that was thin.
the other day when I was talking about this thing also in my department, Ritom knows, someone came up with this Adams family thing, and it's very
Yeah,
interesting that Adams family had a hand which had no owner, the
yeah,
hand
no
which had
owner,
its
and it's very mysterious, charismatic, and at the
yeah,
same time very helpful.
and also it initiates things, various things in the
Right,
plot points, so
right.
it's there, yeah,
I think the second point that I really liked about your entire presentation, that you kind of tried to show the Dracula as a precursor of Adam before his fall. Like how you looked at the fall as a culmination, and because after the fall, the agriculture industry or the like the this
mortality
all,
also,
in mortality and every form of inappropriateness comes after that. So
yeah,
because the Dracula is bereft of all of it, he's devoid of all of it, that kind of constitutes the evidence of development of the hand, that how the hand stands out in Dracula. I mean, that is something that, and I was relating it with, I think, I also did I was doing this course on Manto, and while doing it, I came across this text by Michael Sears, and the name of the text was Embodied Objects. I think embodied objects or senses, five senses. The writer's name is Michael Sears. So basically, he also talks about touch, skin.
yeah.
He talks about mingled bodies and embodied objects. So, how mingled bodies affect is transcending bodies in the form of senses through
Yes,
skin.
yes, yes,
I
yes, yes.
mean, that also while
Victorian,
you are talking about, I mean, that is also very
exact.
interesting.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much. I think someone has posted questions, you know.
Yeah.
So yes, Dr. Madhuchanda Ray Chaudhary has asked, does the hand then embody a conflation of bourgeois and Protestant ideology? It's not only it's not. I'm not looking at it from Marxist point of view. So bourgeois ideology is not really what I'm going for. But yes, Protestant, I would say yes, very much. If you look at it from Max Weber's point of view, what Max Weber understand what is a Protestant ideology, then obviously the hand belongs to this Protestant ideological structure. Yes. Uh, so Rajrani Sadhu, this is a bit of the topic in the series Wednesday. Yes, yes, yes. Could you please comment on that? Yes, we just talked about it. Yeah, right. Uh,
Yeah, five senses. Yeah, yeah. This is the
yeah,
exact book I was
exactly,
talking about
exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Orko, would you like to mention your email ID so that if anyone has any question, they can reach out to you?
Yes, yes. Or ARKA1798 at the rate of gmail.com.
Ritom, can you just write it down in the chat box?
I'm writing it. One.
Okay.
Okay, so when I heard the lecture last time, it was fascinating. It was again fascinating to hear that. And hand is very important, and it's a very integral part of human existence. But we do usually often don't consider it as something which is very important,
You know,
right?
I was really surprised by this 40,000 years old cave painting in Borneo. I mean, I was not looking for it. I was just searching cave paintings, and then it came up, and I was like, what is happening? What is going on?
Right.
So there is this strange theory. Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? Okay,
Uh,
Göbekli.
I, okay. No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, you tell it.
No, 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 you go ahead. I'll just relate
Göbekli
to
Tepe
it.
is a site which is found in Turkey, some part of Turkey, I think. And the interesting thing is that it is almost 12,000 years.
Yeah, dilapidated.
Yeah, yeah. The problem is at that point of time there should not be any
Hmm.
structure which is that complicated and complex, because
Hmm.
humans are supposed to be hunter gatherers at
Right,
that point of time,
right.
right? So so there is this new theory emerging, which often is called as a conspiracy theory, but
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, that's how I know about it. I mean, it's one
yeah,
of
but
the conspiracy theories in art
yes,
history.
but it is actually very interesting. It explains a lot of things actually, that there was a pre-flood civilization. So I think the Borneo handprint bears some kind of uh, I don't know example of it.
It
It
definitely
might
is.
be. I mean,
It is a mystery, I guess. We
yeah,
don't know what has happened in the past. Um, and you also mentioned this fact that George Eliot has this. I mean, her
yes, I
right.
told you that. Yes, the book is called. Sorry, this is the book I was talking to you about, right?
Exactly.
So it is it is probably in the last chapter. Yes, Sweet Fanny Adams. So in this book, you will see that George Eliot was always very much anxious about her right hand, because her right hand was bigger than her left hand, because she worked in the farmlands. So again, the importance of hand.
Exactly, and this metaphor is like always there. I mean, people usually ask for marriage by referring this as a metaphor.
By yeah,
So it was always there. Um, Now the floor is open for question. If anyone wants to ask any sort of question, then you can do that now, or if you want, you can ask your question on the chat box. But it was a very great.
or you
Uh,
can mail me. I'd like to answer them. I have given you the mail ID.
yes, yes, the floor is always open, and the fact that we will upload the video on YouTube, and a lot of people will going to see that. So the mail is very important. So now they can connect you virtually, because the meeting will be over, but the
Yeah,
video will be there, right? So, Shawli, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I think I think I'm done asking my question. So there is another question.
yeah. Does the handle embody a confession or bullshit? I
I
just
think you have already
answered this.
answered this, I think.
Yeah. So Protestant theology, yes, obviously yes, because Max Weber is telling about these things only, right?
Maybe even if you're talking about the laborers and how the severing of the hands, I think that was, I
That
mean, you're
was just a
talking about that
historical
only,
context, but I
right?
think I am not using that kind of lens here.
Yeah,
As I
yeah, yeah.
said,
You cannot, right.
so
I mean, that
because
answers it.
but Agamben is very distance, a lot of distance away from this Marxist ideological structure. But
Right.
if you see that Marxism has this kind of parallel to Christian genealogical structure. I mean, in Marxist structure, the first is there were people who are happy, like in Eden. Then there was this fall, which is capitalism, and then we are in bad space, like in capitalism and all. And then there will be a parousia revolution,
Mm.
which will redeem us. So there is a parallel to Marxist structure and the theological structure
Yeah,
of
I think
history.
Bloshaw talks about something like this, the theological structure of Marxism or something,
Because
if I
I think
remember it clearly.
Marx was a Jew, so I think he was very much ingrained with this kind of thinking process.
Right.
So these three stages of history, these three stages of human existence, the happy stage, the Edenic non-capitalist stage, then the fall or capitalist stage, and then the
Right.
redemption and the revolution
Definitely.
stage. Yeah. So
So I think that's it for today. We had a wonderful talk, and we got a very, very enriching, and yeah, it's a very enriching and insightful session. It was very interesting as well. Got to get to know a lot new perspectives. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, Orko,
And
for
thank
being
you,
with us
Ritam
today.
and Shawnil. Shawnil, your name is right?
Shaoli.
Shauli. It's written Shawnil.
No,
Shao.
it's Shaoli. The N is silent. So the N is
Oh,
for the Chandrabindu. So
oh,
it's
Shauli.
Shaoli.
Shauli. Shauli. Acha. Okay, okay, okay.
Yes.
This
So,
reminds me of Blue Victorian actually, Shawnee. Anyway,
anyway,
Yeah.
so
The first
thank you,
draft.
Ritam and Shauli, for this wonderful thing that you are doing. Keep on doing this. So, thank you. And thank
Yeah.
you for
Thank you for
inviting
being
me.
with us today. Yeah, thank you for being with us today. And thank you everyone for joining
Yeah.
Victorian Sundays. We hope to meet you next Sunday. Can Van Hesling's hand be said an antithesis to the Dracula hand?
Again,
Hmm.
the antithesis, the term itself is very
Yeah.
is coming from a Marxist ideological point. I think that when I talked about the historical context of Victorian hands, people have confused it with a Marxist
Yeah, yeah,
reading.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I am not doing a Marxist reading. I am doing a political theological reading of Dracula. And but to answer your question, not only Van Helsing's hand, every other character's hand apart from
You're right.
Dracula's hand can
Because
be
Dracula's hand is pre-Eden and pre-Adams, no? So you can't
exactly,
compare it with any, I mean,
exactly,
mortal
exactly.
something.
So everyone's hand, everyone who belongs to the societal structure, so everyone who belongs to the Victorian normality, normative structures, their hands can be seen as an antithesis to Dracula's hands.
exactly.
So I think that's it for today. I
Thank
hope
you.
to see you all next Sunday and stay tuned to Victorian Sundays.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you everyone
Bye,
for joining.
Ritam,
Bye bye.
Shauli.